You ever look at a public figure, someone you think you know, and just wonder what their real story is? Not just their own life, but the centuries of history that had to happen to get them there. Well, today we're going to uncover one of those stories, a secret legacy that connects modern politics to some seriously ancient scholarship.
So here's our puzzle. What on earth could possibly connect an Israeli president to a 300-year-old legal masterpiece? I mean, at first glance, you couldn't find two things that seem more different, right? One is a 20th century statesman, a face many of us would recognize. The other is this dense, super complex book of religious law from the 1700s. But believe it or not, there is a direct line between them, and tracing it tells an absolutely remarkable story.
All right, Section 1, a president's rabbinic roots. To start unraveling this whole thing, our story begins with a familiar face from the 20th century. And here he is, Yitzhak Navon, the fifth president of Israel. By any measure, he was a quintessentially modern leader, a diplomat, an educator, a man who was deeply, deeply involved in the civic life of his country.
And this is where it gets really cool. If we look past his official resume and start digging into his ancestry, we find something incredible. His family tree isn't just a list of names. It's practically a treasure map, leading back to a dynasty of scholars and leaders whose influence is still felt to this day.
So let's do it. Let's take a journey back in time and trace this lineage of scholars and leaders. We're going to climb the branches of this pretty extraordinary family tree.
Our first stop is just a couple of generations back. President Namon's father was a community activist. His father, the president's grandfather, was named Nissim Yonah Navon. And this is where the trail starts to get really interesting.
As we follow the line from Nissim Yonah, we find it's just packed with these major rabbinic leaders. One of the most prominent was Rabbi Yehuda Morino Navon, who held the super prestigious title of Rishon LeZion, basically the chief rabbi, the spiritual head of the Sephardic community in Jerusalem. So we're not just talking about a family of scholars. This was a family of powerful community leaders.
And if we trace Rabbi Yehuda's line back just a few more generations, we finally arrive at the source, the patriarch of this whole intellectual dynasty and the author of the masterpiece at the heart of our story, Rabbi Ephraim Navon. Just take a second to look at this timeline. From Rabbi Ephraim's death in 1735 all the way to President Navon's birth in 1921. We are looking at an unbroken chain of influence. This wasn't just some fleeting moment of brilliance. This was a sustained, multi-generational legacy. It's incredible.
Okay, so who was this Rabbi Ephraim Navon, and what was this masterpiece he created that echoed down through his family for centuries?
He was the author of a book called Machneh Ephraim. Now, to put it simply, it's a highly sophisticated legal analysis. He took on the massive, monumental work of Maimonides, one of the greatest Jewish thinkers of all time, and then added his own layer of brilliant commentary and debate on top of it. The book was actually published by his son a few years after he died, and where it came from is key. At a time when the center of the Jewish scholarly world was really in Eastern Europe, this powerhouse of a book emerged from Turkey and Jerusalem. That made it a really rare and hugely significant contribution.
All right. Time for a glimpse into genius. Now, don't worry, you do not need to be a Talmudic scholar to appreciate what's going on here. We're going to take a quick peek inside the book, not to understand every single word, but just to get a feel for the kind of complex conversation Rabbi Navon was having across the centuries.
I mean, just look at this text. This isn't a simple story or a list of rules. This is a dense web of logic, of argument and counter-argument. Every single line is in a dialogue with thinkers who lived hundreds of years before him, and his words, in turn, would go on to inspire thinkers for hundreds of years after.
So what were they even debating? Well, one of the huge topics was ribbit, which is the biblical prohibition against charging interest on a loan. Now, it sounds simple, but the ethical and legal rabbit holes you can go down are incredibly complex. Rabbi Navon's work dives deep into all of those nuances, exploring every possible angle of this ancient financial law.
So how do we know for sure this book was a big deal? Well, imagine a physicist today publishing a paper so brilliant that the next generation's Einstein decides to study it and write detailed notes all over it. That's pretty much what happened here. Rabbi Akiva Eiger, an absolute giant of 19th century Jewish law, studied Machneh Ephraim and added his own systematic notes, cementing its place as an all-time classic.
So we've traced the line from a 20th century president all the way back to an 18th century scholar. Now let's bring that legacy full circle and see how it all connects.
What we're seeing here is a remarkable transformation of a core family value, leadership. For centuries, the Navon family led from the rabbinic court and the study hall. Then, in the 20th century, that exact same impulse for leadership and for public service got channeled into the civic world, culminating in the presidency.
You know, the source material we've been exploring just sums it up perfectly. It calls them a magnificent family that tied its fate with the fate of the holy city of Jerusalem for generations. From religious law to modern statecraft, their story is just woven into the history of the city.
And that leaves us with one final thought. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Every leader, every artist, every innovator we see today is standing on a foundation built by generations that came before them. What other secret histories, what other hidden legacies are shaping the world we're living in right now?